Hey there, you're watching Bare Knuckle Binder. Another early morning out here in the shop. In the last video about this truck, I was talking about this hoist bed. I'm about to cut off the tabs and all the extra stuff that is causing problems on this thing. And before I do that, instead of just willy-nilly cutting off these tabs, I took a ton of measurements. Exactly the distance between all these holes in relation to each other, between them on the frame, and then as a starting point, the distance between this peak and this first hole here. The reason I took that is because, like I said in the last video, I want to shuffle them all about 3 inches forward. And even if it isn't 3 inches, it gives me a yardstick of where to measure it from. So I think I'm ready to start chopping this thing up, so let's get at it. With alterations done on the lower part, I put the top piece on, and I wanted to show you just how much run out there is now in comparison. So I have this clamp on here, just kind of holding it in place. This is about where I want it. Probably I'd actually want it a little, yeah, thereabouts. Thereabouts is fine. But anyway, this is how much run out it actually had. The next step now is to bring this in closer, correct all the run out on the top, which basically will be putting the top piece back on that I just cut off. And then, once I bring it in, weld that on. And I'm going to put a cap on the end just to make sure, because I don't want it just pulling on the top and possibly twisting up the bottoms here. I want it completely squared out. I can start reassembling this thing in the truck once I get that bed off of there, but I've got some stuff going on before that can happen. So let's talk about it. So I've been rigging up a seat and a key and all that stuff, ignition switch, for when I'm able to drive this out of here. This is actually my throttle. That's pretty cool. I got an electric fuel pump rigged up there and a fuel line here. Then here on the other side, down below here, there is a Farmall starting tank rigged up with a valve that runs up to the electric pump. Now I just have that there because I have an original fuel tank for this truck. Not original to this truck, but the correct gas tank for this truck. It's actually out of Della. Della has a different tank in it right now. But that's just to move it around, and where it's sitting there below the bed like that. That's so that I can move this bed off of here, put the cab on it, all that stuff without affecting that gas tank until I need to move it. It's just an out of the way place. So that said, she needs a starter so we can see what it's gonna do. By the way, I found a bunch of scraps and I welded up an exhaust. It actually has an old used takeoff muffler from a Farmall M running it. I actually had the exhaust done for a while, but then I reinstalled the PTO drive for the front winch. And not only did I find this amazing repair, looks like Frankenstein, but I also found that I had to redo the exhaust again and put a dip down in it, drop it down 4 inches and bring it back up. Lots of welding on a junk exhaust system, but anyway, back to the starter. Guess what came in the mail? We've got a starter here. Look at this guy. This is the one. So big shout out to my friend Natalie for sending this to me, spur of the moment. One thing I'm gonna do before I put it on there is it has 2 oil cups, and that one's pretty easy to get to, but it also has one that goes inside the bell housing. So we're gonna oil that before I stuff it in there. So let's get that oiled and see if this thing will fire off. So I wanted to do a really quick walkthrough. I have a lot of questions based on like junkyard assessments of things. A few videos back, I fired off Farmall H in a junkyard to see if the motor was good. Yep. And it really doesn't take a lot to test a motor or a starter, or just get something running, get it to fire if it's going to. And so I figured I'd show you just like how easy it is just to set one of these up just to make it fire. So what I need is, this is a cable coming from a battery. I don't have the battery hooked up yet, just for safety, because I'm not trying to arc a wrench. So this is a solenoid. This is what activates the starter. This is the lug that comes from the battery. So that's what I'm going to connect this to. This lug goes to the starter. We leave that alone. It's already connected. And then this little lug on the bottom is from the ignition switch. And so that's what actually activates the solenoid, which activates the starter. So to get this thing to fire, all we need to do is we need to connect a wire to this to jump the starter. We need to connect the battery to this, and then I have to have a jumper wire on the coil. Everything else as far as ignition is still hooked up how I left it from probably about this time last year. So was it last year or was it earlier this year? I think it was last year. It doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to think while on camera, which never has very good results. So anyway, I'm connecting the battery now, the cable at least. The battery's not connected. And you want to make sure it's all tight, and definitely all these nice and snug, nice and tight, or else you will learn what happens when you have a bad ground. Things start smoking and whatnot. So that's on there, that's tight. And then I have, let's see here, just this wire. It doesn't have to be very long. It could be 6 inches long. Don't want to lose that. I have that wire. Now, I don't know if you can see it, if it's focusing in, but there is some bare copper on that wire. So then I take a jumper cable, not like a car jumper cable, but just a jumper wire. It's just a wire with 2 clips on each end. So I'm gonna put one end on the side of the coil opposite the distributor. And then this one now is my ignition switch. So when I connect this to this, which is a hot cable, that would be the ignition on. But I don't have the battery connected right now, so remember that. So now it's pretty much ready to fire. So I have this cable, this is from the coil, this is my starter, this is basically the key at this point. So here's my little squirt bottle of gas. It's safer than just trying to dump gas in there. I don't have the fuel pump running yet, so we just have to administer a little bit of gas like this. So now I have my battery cable. I'm gonna connect the battery. All right, so the battery's connected. This is my key switch. Ta-da! The motor is on basically. Squirt a little bit of gas in there. And then you take your key and you hit it to the hot lug. That's promising. She fires. So that's all I need to know, that the motor fires and turns over. So now I will disconnect this stuff and I'll start hooking up wires from my keyed ignition switch over there. Cool. Okay, there's my keyed switch. It's got her wired up. Fuel pump's down there. This is my throttle. So one pump there. See what she does. Nice. I just need to move the pedals back.
Ready?
Yeah. All right. All right. Keep bringing her down. It can come forward, but I mean, a lot of that I can do once it's on there.
Okay.
Yeah, I just bring her down. So we want to let it down and just scooch it up. I mean, it's straight right
I
now.
don't think so. Okay.
Ready?
Hold on a second. Just trying to get off the shifter. All right.
Watch that engine file. Murphy's right out in the back pocket. You don't have a punch or anything when you stick in this one hole, do you?
Oh, I spilled oil on this, so it slides real easy.
I think I'm pretty close to being my holes here.
All right, about almost to the curve of the frame.
Right. I just want it. Not too far. Not too far. Not too far.
Which way?
Okay, my hole is right at the corner of the frame. More towards you than me.
I think that's about it. Oh, tilt it back up. I don't worry about it. Well, it's a brisk morning, and just came out here drinking my coffee and looking what we got done yesterday, and use these blocks to leverage the cab up and get the mounts underneath it. The bolts aren't in it yet, they're right there. I've got the bolts loosely in the holes here and on the other side. A little bit of air filter material I put over there, since I have a bunch of air filters for these motors and not one of them is here in Wisconsin with me. So looking at the amount of stuff it's sucked in, I'm glad I put that on there. Another thing to mention is that this thing's running like a paraplegic now. A few times off camera, I had this thing idling perfectly in the shop, but it decided that that was not to be when I backed it out. So one thing I do know about it is that I rebuilt the carb, partially rebuilt the carb, like everything inside the bowl, and I raised the float, and it's acting like it's just drowning in fuel. So I will get back in there and lower the float. Also, the gasket's leaking. I usually like to make them out of nitrile rubber, Buna N as it's called. So just more stuff to do, but that's just little stuff. So, but the cab's on, and that is huge. That's huge progress. So you got this. It's going well. It's looking good. The seat there, my buddy Colin hooked me up with that. The cab floor looks good. Just going over everything they need. Now it's interesting to note that I marked this. This is where I thought the front of the bed would be with all my measurements. But yesterday, lining everything up with the cab, it's gonna have to be right here. So that's almost an inch, at least 3/4 of an inch. And so if I had just gone through and just put the bed on and welded in the hoist bed and everything, that would have been tragic. So another thing to mention is that right there, I just have the differential in the transfer case locked because I don't have the rear drive shaft cut yet, because I plan to make a video about the finer points of cutting a drive shaft. But anyway, then we have the bed, and you may or may not notice, but the bed is sitting on the trailer backwards. That's the front of the bed. And the reason for that is how I actually wrestled this thing up onto the truck by myself, was that I spun the thing around on the trailer frame and then backed the trailer up to it, and managed to lift it up and wrestle it on there by myself. So that's, I guess, how I'm gonna do it again once I get the hoist all put in there. So anyway, dang, doesn't that thing look cool? It's all coming together. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's cold out here. I'm gonna get back inside and drink some more coffee and get something to eat and get started on this thing. And actually, it's Thanksgiving, so I don't know how much time I'll actually have to work on this one today, but happy Thanksgiving to everybody everywhere who's watching, and I'll see you in the next video.